Thanks, Charles, for letting me use your gardening supplies. I'll make sure I put it back in the garage. Man, tending to that lawn is a lot of work.
Tell you the truth, Jim, I'm more concerned about keeping this house.
What's going on?
Well, you know, Sarah lost her job 2 months ago, right?
Yeah.
Since we lost that income, the bills have been piling up, and we're so far behind. I don't want to lose the house because of back taxes. I don't know what to do.
I understand. The same thing happened to my sister and her husband when he lost his job. Do you know that the Wayne County Treasurer has plans and programs to help people stay in their homes?
No, I didn't. Tell me about it.
Yeah, go to www.treasure.waynecounty.com to see if you qualify.
What's that site again?
www.treasure.waynecounty.com.
Got it.
Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. This is Saeed Khan, and it is another episode of The Week That Was, joining you this week from Manchester, England. So, hope everyone is doing well back in the D, or wherever you... Alan, are you back in the D?
I'm in D.C., one of the D's.
You're in D.C.
D
You're
plus
in one of the D's.
D plus C.
We got a double D.
The other one.
Yeah.
This is truly an international
Oi, really? All of a sudden. Well, I think then that sets the marker for the kind of show we're going to have this week. Joining us then, we have attorneys Steve Fishman and Joel Sklar. Not the usual troika today, Nancy.
I know.
Just to remind you about that word.
Right.
We have, though, fear not, pollster Ed Sarpolus. We have labor and community activist Barb Ingalls. We have veteran journalist Nancy Derringer, and of course, we have co-founder of Deadline Detroit, Allan Lengel. So first off the bat, and I am sure that the timing is purely coincidental, the House GOP has formally authorized the go-ahead for the Biden impeachment inquiry. This is Joe, obviously not Hunter, who can't be impeached.
They're trying, though. They're trying.
They are trying, and he keeps defying that subpoena.
Yeah.
But I mean, here we go. That's just before we get going with primary season and the election campaigns really kick off. All of a sudden, it seems as though we're going to have something going on in Congress that deals with President Joe Biden. Am I just too cynical on this side of the pond?
You are not too cynical at all. That's the timing is everything in this case. And you know, I was just thinking the other day, I had this really cynical colleague in Indiana who was an op-ed writer. He's since left this mortal plane. And you know, he loved things like coil. Yeah, the mortal coil. He shuffled off the coil and is no longer on the mortal plane. Anyway, he because he smoked a lot. He loved things like shutdowns because he said, you know, if they're not in session, they can't fuck with us, basically, which is talk about a deeply cynical way of looking at things. But, you know, I've just been noticing, maybe because I used to work for a policy-oriented publication and then for a policy research shop, I'm just astounded at what is not getting done in Washington and the state legislatures. When Ron DeSantis put money in the budget so that the state could sue the NCAA because Florida State didn't get a seating in the. I just thought, what? How is this the government's job? And you know that they don't have shit on Biden. If they did, they would have revealed it a lot sooner than this. I mean, what they're going to do is they just want his name in the news so that low information voters who are idiots can say, well, he's just as bad as the other guy. And, you know, and that's what's going to be. So that's my
for anybody listening from the state of Florida, from the ACC, Nancy's comments are strictly her own opinion and do not reflect those of the week that was.
But what's the what is the charge? I mean, what is the high crime and misdemeanor he's accused of?
Exactly.
The impeachment in court.
Well, they have all this data. They've got all this data. They've been gathering streams of data, and they haven't decided what they're going to run on yet. But I'm just very on a positive. Every poll that I've ever done, whether it's Clinton or even Trump, the numbers go up for the person being attacked, because now you're getting into the sympathy vote defending your person. Okay?
Right.
So and indirectly, this gets Biden into position. He actually gets to go into campaign mode, which he has not been doing. So there's a positive side here, and
Well, that means that there's actually sympathy left to share, and it's not all going to Florida State.
Correct. Well, it's all over in Alabama. It's all about Alabama.
And so, Ed, tell us about what do you think about the low poll numbers and stuff that are coming out?
Well, there's a couple of different reasons why it's going on. One, it's mostly because of the youth, and it's because of the independents and also the black voters. Number three, Biden and the Democrats are doing nothing specifically in Michigan, if you want to speak on Michigan. Nothing that the Democrats have passed has an impact on voters. Nothing. It's all personal stuff on union stuff. Right now, the abortion issue in Michigan is down to 4% as an issue that women and Democrats are talking about. It's inflation. Secondly, right now, I don't think you're going to see high numbers for Biden until they decide he will be our candidate. We still have the age issue that's impacting him. So when you see these low poll numbers, they're looking for another person until they have no other choice.
Interesting.
So Cornel West, who's running as an independent in 2024, believes that there may be another LBJ moment where Biden, he believes, is not going to be making it through the campaign, and will somehow the other drop out either because of the economy or for some other reason.
I've been saying that too, but that probably only happened if Trump does not make it on the ballot. If Trump does not get on the ballot, I will guarantee you'll probably see Biden slip away.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Okay.
All right. Well,
Hey,
what about?
can I say that, Steve? I don't know. It sounds like there's a vacuum cleaner or something coming. Yeah, do you have some noise?
Vacuum cleaner.
Well, the show sucks, Just kidding.
Oh,
all right.
wow.
I think there's a little bit of feedback coming back from your.
From where? From me?
Yeah, I think so. Here, if I put it on silent, it goes away. So.
Mute all that.
Yeah.
So
right.
Allan, I mean, you're in Washington right now. I mean, have you been hearing anything around Ben's Chili about the impeachment?
Not really. You know what? It just seems like background noise, really. I think people are just gonna, by the way, it's Virginia Ali. It was her 90th birthday from Ben's Chili Bowl. They had a big celebration at the Lincoln Center or whatever. But no, you know what? I think it's just, I think people are trying. There's so much other stuff going on, and the Republicans are just so, embroiled in this thing, like trying to get Joe Biden and play politics here. It's like there's so much shit going on. You want to address the border, then address the border. But, you're not addressing the border. You're not addressing any issues. We've got wars going on. We've got decisions on funding, and they're putzing around with the,
Isn't their entire aim to just basically dismantle the government? They don't want to do anything. They don't want to do anything except for divert and make us look at something else, and they don't mind being clowned because that's what they are. And it's frustrating because there's lots of stuff to be done that instead they're doing that. Yeah. And I have to say, I think that Joe Biden seems to be just working instead of grandstanding and going on TV and saying stupid things and all of that. He's kind of out there working. Michigan's doing pretty well. We don't have to worry about the abortion issue because we put that away. And maybe we should manufacture something like the Republicans would, but I don't think they really need to pay much attention to Michigan right now. We're chugging along.
Hey, Steve,
I think
just
we
raise your
should
hand. Steve, I want to raise your hand when you want to talk, and I'll unmute you because I think there's a lot of noise coming from your.
Just feedback. It's okay. So.
All right. Anyway. I think it's just feedback. So I mean, you mentioned, Allan, about the idea of the southern border and also funding wars. And Vladimir Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, was visiting Washington, beseeching the Biden administration and the leadership in Congress to authorize more funding for.
Whoops! I'm sorry. Hold on. Whoops.
I got it. Yeah. No problem.
Yeah. All right.
Yes. Clearly, that was Russia censoring me from even mentioning.
Yeah, we did not want to hear that
again.
the fact that the Republicans are saying that we will not go ahead and vote for any aid to Ukraine unless there's also aid for or funding for the southern border. Is there really any more urgency in Washington for Ukraine? It seems as though that's becoming more and more a rearview mirror issue.
Amongst Democrats, it is. Amongst Republicans, they're saying no more money for Ukraine. So the Republicans don't get punished on this. Now, if it's Israel, if they don't do something for Israel, that's when they're going to be hurting. But right now, the only supporting group, public voters, not party, not people in Congress, is the Republicans. This is like the 1930s. Don't do anything for Europe.
It's very strange.
Yeah.
It's just further to the isolationist policy of
1930s.
NATO, of destroying what has kept us safe for so long. It is completely insane.
Mm-hmm.
Well, on this side of the pond, I mean, people are going apoplectic because they were really looking for the United States to step up, both in a position of leadership and with money. Zelensky, on the way back, is stopping here and trying to see if there can be more commitment from the European Union and from individual states. But it's not really looking very good. It seems that, again, Ukraine is becoming more and more of a back burner issue. It seems as though, I'm not so sure about the Europeans, but at least half of the American political leadership is willing to keep things as they are. Putin had a major news conference just earlier today, and it seems as though he's willing to grind this one out.
Well, you also got to remember is that the people that are really turned off is that the large portion that are becoming young voters under 40, they have no history.
Right.
No.
Not, and the bottom line, when I grew up and you grew up, I had First World War, Second World War, Korean War, Vietnam, all these different wars. This current large group under 40, what's war? Why do we have to do anything? Just like I said, it's a repeat of the 30s, from the First World War. So we were in this law. And the other thing, which is driving all this stuff, the viewership of traditional television is down. It's mostly streaming and digital. So you're having most of the people that are under 34 now are doing it, TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube. The TVs, the news hours, except for Fox News, which is getting dominant numbers. That's the only news source that people watch. And if you're under 40, you're not even watching that.
And Ukraine is actually not something that's being covered on TikTok the way that, for example, the Israel-Gaza issue is.
Yes.
And so you're right about the young people going, Bill Cycli is actually dialing in. Hey, Bill, how you doing? The similarities to the 1930s are remarkable and scary. I think Ed is right. And Russia is celebrating. Well,
they're celebrating. They're going when they're done with Ukraine, then it's on to Moldova or some other former Soviet republic. And this is again, he should be celebrating because everything's going his way, thanks to people like J.D. Vance in this country. And so.
Trump, it's so Trumpy and just what's going on. The Trump calls the Democrats communists and Marxists, and he's the lapdog to Putin. It's maddening to see the words and the actions.
Mm-hmm.
I want to share something. I talked to Ellen earlier that I read on analysis of what's going on about the top Republican candidate. His primary rules were never allow the public to cool off, never admit a fault or wrong, never concede that there may be some good in our enemy, never leave room for alternatives, never accept blame, concentrate on one enemy at a time, and blame him for everything that goes wrong. Believe that we will be a big lie sooner. The people will believe the big lie sooner or later, and if we keep repeating its frequency enough, people will sooner or later believe it. That's Donald Trump. When that was written? This was an OSS analysis of Hitler in 1944. To finally release the secret analysis. So basically, if you remember, Trump only reads Mein Kampf.
Right.
Okay? And
he doesn't read shit. He can't make his way through a Dell comic.
He's got the Cliff Notes. He has the Cliff Notes for that.
And another thing was the fact that Trump's following that out of the analysis of Hitler, which was an only broken secret in 1969, full recognition of the fact that the overwhelming majority of people want to be led and are ready and willing to submit to a leader can win with their respect and confidence. He has been successful in respect because he has been able to convince followers of his own self-confidence because he's guessed right on many occasions and he's created an impression of infallibility.
Wow.
This is psychoanalysis of Hitler in 1904. One thing note that came out of psychoanalysis, when Hitler got really upset, he started chewing on carpeting. He dropped it.
Wow.
So I guess that was his. But in those days, they didn't have ketchup in glass bottles, Ed, so I guess
That's correct.
Hitler, he couldn't have thrown those around the bunker. Well, I mean, so I'd like to ask you a question. I mean, Nikki Haley, who seems to be making some inroads, at the very least, it looks like she might pass Ron DeSantis, going up the ladder of the rest of the GOP field. She landed the endorsement of New Hampshire Governor Chris Sununu just a few days ago. Is that going to create momentum for her, Ed?
That's if Governor Christie gets out of the race. Because right now, Christie is probably doing very well as Nikki Haley in that state. So the vote will be divided. Now, and actually, this is what actually Trump is hoping for, because we already knew that New Hampshire was probably not going to go for Trump. But because of Christie and Haley in doing well, that divides vote, which may actually help Trump in New Hampshire.
I mean, so Trump wins Iowa, and then New Hampshire's a toss-up, and then South Carolina, I mean, we presume might go to Haley because she's a former governor from there, right?
But the polling right now is not showing that.
I'm sorry. So this is hilarious.
Aren't they all running for vice president anyway? I mean, that's what they're all running for is vice
Except
president.
for Christie. He doesn't care what happens to himself.
No, I actually I hate to say the words. I like Chris Christie, but I gotta say these days I like Chris Christie.
But I think
I want him to go away forever.
Yeah, but the one thing that came out of the debate is I think Christie might be willing to run as vice president under Nikki Haley ticket because he's starting to defend Haley.
That's what I was thinking. That, yeah, it'd be interesting. I mean, look, if Ron DeSantis got out of the way, I think Nikki Haley would really have a good shot. But it looks like DeSantis, his ego is too big to defer to her.
And his scary, crazy wife. You know,
right.
Weird, oh my God, that lady is terrifying. She's.
Well, did you understand there was a movement in Florida to have her flip over? She run and not DeSantis. She just pick up the mantle.
Oh, really? Wow.
She's running to be Jackie. She's running to be the next Jackie Kennedy. And I'm sorry, but she just ain't got it. So.
Where's the GOP money going, Ed, right now? I mean, is it leaning toward any particular candidate?
Well, there has been $70 to $100 million spent to defeat Donald Trump. That started about 3 months ago when you talked to the Koch brothers. What's happening now is the money is beginning to move.
I'm sorry, Koch brother.
Koch brother. Yeah, Koch brother.
Yeah.
Well, you never know. They burn money incense. But at the same token is that they're starting to go more to Nikki Haley. What's going to problem is what happens, and if nothing happens in Iowa of any consequence in New Hampshire, and I think the money will totally dry up. Because other than March, the big race, which is March, which is the whole South, then if nothing happens there, then it's Trump's.
Just if we can end the year on a positive note, and just tell me that Vivek's not going to win anything.
Oh, he's going to win the retard of the year.
I watched the town hall thing a little bit on CNN, and I mean, he's a well-spoken guy, but he's just a jerk. He's a know-it-all. He's a know-it-all who knows so little.
But there's some indication that he's Trump money from Trump is getting to him to actually be his attack dog on behalf of Trump. That's what the story is right now, that he's actually doing this to benefit Trump.
Yeah.
He's starting to repeat like the craziest conspiracy theories. January 6th was an inside job, etc. All of it at this manic yapping chihuahua pace of speech. I used to say that Rick Snyder was the most anti-charismatic politician that I'd ever really known, and I think he's been easily supplanted by Vivek Ramaswamy. I can't imagine anybody with double X chromosomes voting for that guy. He's like the worst blind date of your life. The one where you're like gnawing an arm off just to get away from him, kind of thing. So,
and he's a close friend of our great rich computer guy.
Who's that?
The Tesla guy.
Elon Musk.
Yeah, no doubt.
Elon Musk. Yes.
Yeah, he sounds like he walks into the room with Elon's like, "Where's the Coke?" Because I feel like I need a little pick me up, and then so anyway.
Well, I don't even think he's going to win the Indian vote because he's not a doctor.
He's a Brahmin, though. He's a Brahmin, so who knows? But anyway.
I don't. That one kind of surprised me. But so also going on in Washington and dealing with the Orange Man himself is the fact that the U.S. Supreme Court is going to hear the January 6th case dealing with a particular charge that not only affects Trump, but a lot of those who have been charged and in fact convicted since January 6, 2021. That is obstructing an official proceeding. And I think, Allan, you might have some video dealing with the Donald.
I do. Hold on.
If you're a Republican sticking by Trump right now as he faces 4 criminal cases in a fraud trial, allow me to remind you of the ironclad rule of Trumpism. No matter how loyal you are to him, he will never be loyal to you. If you send Trump a holiday card, he won't send you one. He'll just send yours back in a week with this scribbled on it in Sharpie.
Hey, here's one other one.
Never surrender to the tyranny.
What is Trump doing here on this shirt?
This is his mugshot.
Gotcha. So that was taken when he surrendered to authorities to have his picture taken.
Huh? It says never surrender, but
is that on the back? Is the butt? Let me see the back. Let me see the back.
I think
but,
it's just Trump.
It's just Trump. So where's the butt part? Is that's implied?
The tyranny.
Barb,
the tyranny.
It's tyranny. And Barb, correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't that shirt from the Corey Hart revival tour?
And his haircut certainly is.
well, that was his big song. Is never surrender.
Never surrender.
So, from what it appears, is this the case that Jack Smith wanted to be in front of the Supreme Court as an expedited appeal, or am I mixing them up now?
Fishman. Well, the immunity one that he wants in front of the Supreme Court, because that's the one that's important. But that's the one to Jack Smith. So the Supreme Court's the one. That's what they really took up. Also, was the immunity charge that Jack Smith wanted it, because that impacts Mark Meadows. It impacts everybody in Donald Trump. Because once Donald Trump gets over this, most of his reason for delaying the court cases are gone. Once the immunity charge, if the Supreme Court supports what the prosecutor is doing.
Right, and bypassing the D.C. Circuit, makes things go a little bit quicker. So a lot quicker. So, I think it's tactically a really
Fish, what do you think about this case about that obstructing an official proceeding was the wrong charge?
Well, I don't know that it's the wrong charge. I think what really is going on, and you guys have kind of touched on it, you just got to get these people to court. That's what it's all boiling down to. That's why Smith is trying to bypass the circuit and get the immunity thing. Because once they go to court, I've said this 100 times on this show, then you're going to have witnesses and you're going to have evidence and you're going to have prosecutors who are very well prepared. And the defense is going to be left with the same horseshit that we've been listening to, which quite frankly didn't work for, what's the guy's name who he pardoned, Manafort. When he went to court, it didn't work because jurors, when they're finally in court, assuming a decent job is done on voir dire, which the judges are going to do, they're going to be listening to evidence. It's not going to be all the stuff on Fox News and all the rest of the crap. I don't think there's any problem with the charging documents. What you're seeing, though, is the classic delay that I guess Trump has always done through his entire career, and that a lot of defendants do, quite frankly. If you're not in trial, you can't get convicted. So the longer there's a delay, I just got a court date for January of 2025. And when I talked to the client, I said, well, one thing for sure, you ain't going anywhere next year because you're not going to be in court. That's basically what the Trumpists are trying to do. And the lawyers have no choice but to do it, whether they believe any of this crap or not, because he's the one that's dictating everything that's going on. So I think that they're doing the exact right thing by trying to get it to the Supremes, get this horseshit claim of immunity, which is complete horseshit. I mean, if it's not 9-0, it tells you all you need to know about Alito and Clarence Thomas, but it's going to be 7-2 at least, because the claim is ridiculous. And then we go to court. That's what we need. We need.
I think the other thing, Steve, that helped Jack push that route. We now have Trump's phone. Okay, we've got that. We've got other recordings and other videos. So all this stuff that's been delaying has actually benefited Jack Smith because now he has information that he didn't even have, and he gets to submit it in advance.
And keep in mind, as we've said many times, the more the time goes on and the closer you get to where you actually have to go to court, you're going to see these co-defendants folding their tents and making deals because they don't want to go get 64 months when they can make a deal and get 6 months or 18 months and testify against the guy who, as we all know, never does anything for anybody, sends the card back with the who dis. I mean, that's him. Loyalty doesn't mean anything to him any more than it meant to Hitler, But the long and the short of it is we need to get, if this March court date stands in the Chutkan case, if that date stands, you watch and see what's going to happen between now and then. A lot of people are going to say, shit, we're going to have to go to court, whether it's there or in any of these other different indictments, and they're going to start making deals.
So Bill Cycley is dialing in here saying he's not worried about the claim regarding immunity, but that he does think that the Supreme Court may throw out the charge of obstruction of official proceeding, which will create some havoc. It's the classic divide the baby in half move. You do have not only Alito and Thomas, but you have 3 Trump appointees sitting on the bench. And there is no compulsion for the Supreme Court to rule any time before the last day of the term, which is June the 30th. Well after a lot of, I think all of the primaries will be decided.
So that's what we're going to have to see. But all I'm saying is that once some court case, not the one in New York, but let's say the Georgia case, once there's a trial date, that's the trial date, and we're going on that date, that's when you guys are going to see action. You've seen some of it, some of it with the co-defendants in Georgia. You'll see more of it. There's nothing that gets people to cooperate and plead guilty like having a firm trial date. And that's really what this is all going to boil down to, whether it's cutting the baby in half. We just need something that's going to court, because a lot of these people that are charged are weenies. They're bully. But when you get into federal court, you got to have a little different kind of a stomach to sit there in a trial as a federal defendant. And I'm telling you, it's not going to happen.
And any delays now for the DC case or the Milagro case allows the Georgia case to move into March. Because if it gets delayed, because she's ready to move it whenever it's ready.
And as I've said, from literally the first day when that phone call came out, when Raffensperger taped the call and let it out, that's the strongest case, because it's his own voice. And that's why, Ed, what you're talking about in the phones or email, anything you can get where it's his voice, there's nothing worse for a criminal defendant than sit there and listen to your own voice with good prosecutors who are going to say, hey, don't take my word for it. That's him talking. And as I've said before, Raffensperger is a huge Republican. Why did he tape it? He taped it because he knew the guy's a pathological liar. That's why he taped it. And that's what they'll bring out, I'm sure, because any good prosecutor will do it that way. And that is powerful, powerful testimony. I don't care where the jurors come from.
So, given the fact, Steve, that Trump said that his call with Ukraine was perfect, he never claimed that with Raffensperger. So is an imperfect call an affirmative defense?
I think when Ed was reading that stuff from 1944, that analysis, it's astounding how right on and how consistent that is with the way Donald Trump behaves. It's really astounding. I mean, it's 70 years ago, 90 years ago, whatever, 80 years ago. But it's right on the, particularly the part about never, ever confess to anything, never take any blame, and turn it around and point it at the next guy. And again, that's the difference between what we're talking about here, where you're on TikTok or whatever those places are, or when you're in a courtroom. Because in a courtroom, you're seeing what's happened even in this little civil case, the one up in New York. They don't. It's just not going to be allowed. The trial judge doesn't allow that kind of stuff. And the lawyers who try it, like his lawyers in New York, you saw what the judge responded to them a couple of times when they start talking a bunch of nonsense. We're not out in the street. We're in a courtroom, and there's rules. And I'm telling you, it's going to change everything once you can sit his butt down in there as a criminal defendant, not a civil defendant, and start playing all these things. Smith's got so much stuff, and it's going to be a different ballpark.
Well, I mean, Hitler and Roy Cohn as your mentors and your spirit animals. I don't know, Alan. I mean, I'll never go ahead and say anything to anybody who cites George Santos and Draymond Green as their spirit animals and mentors. I think you got some video footage for this.
I do have, let's see here.
Golden State Warriors forward Draymond Green has been suspended indefinitely without pay by the NBA for striking Phoenix Suns center Yusuf Nurkic during Tuesday night's game.
What did he hit him with?
With his arm.
Wow.
Soul.
That was, sucker punch, that's the equivalent of a sucker punch. I mean, that's just the
Can I
lowest
see
in
that
sport.
again? I just want to see that again.
Yeah, sure.
Golden State Warriors forward Draymond Green has been suspended indefinitely without pay by the NBA for striking Phoenix Suns center Yusuf Nurkic during Tuesday night's game.
Wow.
Yeah.
Draymond's got a history.
Yeah,
I
saw it.
Sportsmanlike behavior.
I saw a montage of some of his.
Yeah.
Hold on a second before you unmute him. I saw a montage of some of his scuzzier acts before, and it's pretty amazing. But I don't pay attention to this stuff. So go ahead. Sorry, Steve. Go ahead. You're the basketball guy.
Really briefly, keep in mind the person who's in charge of the suspensions is Joe Dumars, Hall of Fame guard from the Pistons, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting thing to me, the most interesting thing was the Phoenix guy, whose name I don't know. He's a European guy. He really didn't go off on Green. What he said was that brother needs some serious help, and that's basically where we're at, because this has been going on he slugged his own teammate in practice 2 years ago, last year, whenever it was, and this has been going on for his entire career. And I think that the Phoenix Suns center is correct, and I think that's what's going to be required. I don't know if Dumars will let him back this whole year, but I'll bet you that somewhere in there is going to be some kind of psychological counseling is going to be required for him to come back, because you just can't have this. These are huge people, and they're not wearing helmets and shoulder pads. I'm telling you, having been in the middle of enough scraps on a basketball court, when you start getting guys 6'9", 260, and another guy 6'7", 240, and they start swinging at each other, it's not the same as your little kids slapping at each other in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Let alone when they get in the stands like the Malice at the Palace.
No, yeah. But I wouldn't be surprised if he's suspended the rest of the season. If they're not gonna make the playoffs. They have a horrible record so far this year. So I would not be surprised to see him gone for the rest of the season.
One of the shots in that montage,
I think he should be.
Yeah, one of the shots in that montage that I watched, a couple of them got knocked down, which happens sometimes. As he was getting up, he directly put his foot on somebody's stomach, essentially, as he was rising to his feet, and just ground it right in there. It's just God, who does that? Yeah.
But the irony of his future this season in the hands of somebody who was on one of the bad boys teams, delicious, absolutely delicious. So,
we have a quick commercial, and then we will.
Because I live in Detroit, I was able to get tuition-free college through the Detroit Promise. I feel very fortunate working with the Detroit Promise. They were able to afford me so many opportunities. I'm currently studying media production and journalism at University of Michigan Dearborn. I'm looking to take my talents further into the production industry, short films. I love working with people here, and this is where I want to be. And that's why I'm Detroit for life.
We've said this before. That is one of the greatest programs. I love seeing that ad every time.
The Detroit Promise?
It's just great. Mm-hmm. He clearly picked the wrong school, but I'm really happy for him. Wayne State represent. On a very serious and somber note, it looks like Wayne County prosecutors have now apprehended and have charged a Detroit man in the murder of downtown synagogue director Samantha Woll. Michael Jackson Bolanos has been charged with felony murder for what appears to be a home invasion, and then a murder or killing that derives from that. Apparently, according to the report, there was blood found on his jacket, which matched that of Sam. And certainly it looks like the prosecutors are more confident that this is in fact the right suspect compared to the other effort. Allan, I know that you've been covering the case pretty closely. Are there any other developments from it or details?
Not that I know, but I mean, it's interesting sort of the twists and turns there for that whole case, because I think that it sounds like they had been trailing this guy. This guy had been breaking into cars. They'd questioned him, and so they were keeping an eye on him. And then there was a twist that they suddenly arrested the ex-boyfriend of Sam Woll, and they couldn't, pin anything on him. They held him for, they arrested him Tuesday night. They released him on Friday. They had nothing. And I think that threw them off, saying, wow, maybe we're on the wrong trail, which happens all the time in investigations where you think it's one person. It's like the anthrax case. They had Stephen Hatfield, the scientist, all that time. They're putting everything into it, and it ended up being another crazy scientist. They were both a little crazy, but and so, I mean, it sounds like they have some pretty solid evidence. Steve?
I think what this shows is how fortuitous it is that there's cameras and things like that all over the place nowadays. This is the kind of case that, they'd have been at a loss, in all honesty, unless you had somebody that was up at 4 a.m, happened to be looking outside and see a guy sneaking in, stealing stuff out of cars. It sounds to me like that's what really did it, was the fact that you had these cameras. You could see the person. Obviously, they were able to identify him. To me, as a defense lawyer, blood on your jacket that matches the victim, that's pretty tough to explain.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, I think I think the police deserve a lot of credit. They really worked hard on it. I saw in the paper today that somehow only Dana Nessel can somehow criticize them because a couple of her investigators, supposedly, according to her at least, were booted off of the investigation, which, if it's true, so what? I mean, what we should be focusing on is, do we have the right person? It sure sounds like they do. And it's just another indication of how important it is in terms of investigating crime to have all of these surveillance videos and cameras. It's just so different from 50 years ago when I started in this business, where everything depended on an ID witness or somebody who actually saw or heard something. Now you got those cameras, and it's tough to quarrel with them.
You got cameras. You also have the cell phone towers, and
that too.
And there's a lot more there. And the DNA testing is a lot better than it used to be. So you do have, it's tougher to commit a crime with it and get away with it.
Can I just say, though, I mean, I'm kind of surprised. First of all, if they had all this evidence on this guy that they just arrested and charged, I mean, why did they even go after the boyfriend in the first place? I mean, it sounds like that was incredibly shaky stuff, and he hired a decent lawyer, and he was out before. Go ahead, Steve. What? You can answer this.
From what I know, he did it to himself. The ex-boyfriend. The ex-boyfriend, he's a brilliant guy, but supposedly has some problems. And he made a phone call to, I think, the Kalamazoo police, to somebody.
911. He made a 911.
Yeah, and what are you supposed to do if you're the police? And the guy's kind of blaming himself, right, Alan? He was.
Yeah.
You got to investigate, and I don't know about having to arrest him and hold him for 72 hours, but you have to investigate. And if somebody calls and says that somehow they had something to do with it, I don't think it meant that they ignored the other things they were doing. What I think was a smart thing by them, though, is they kept a lot of that stuff private. In fact, that was one of the reasons that in this article where Dana was complaining that things were leaking when those guys were around. And it's really important when something like this is going on to keep everything close to you, so the suspect or whatever doesn't have the ability to start screwing around with stuff. For instance, like getting rid of the jacket.
Right.
There's all kinds of different things that happen, but I don't believe that they necessarily had evidence that pointed to that other guy. He did it to himself, kind of, when whatever distress he was in.
They just had a strong indication because of this statement that he made to the Kalamazoo police.
He implicated him.
Yeah, I mean.
And what police department wouldn't have something to do with that person? The person implicates himself in a horrendous homicide, and you're going to leave him be?
I will tell you who. The Grosse Pointe Park police would not follow that, because that's exactly what happened in the Jane Bashara case, when the guy showed up and said, "Hey, I killed her," and they said, "Yeah, get on out of here." Anyway, I have to say,
personally,
go ahead.
I think it's time for you to move out of the Grosse Pointes. You got to move to regular civilization, because every single week you tell us something about the Grosse Pointes which would make any sensible citizen. I'd rather live in Wyandotte.
I'm Grosse Pointe Antifa. That's how it goes. The other thing I will say is, as a person who enjoys reading crime fiction, I have noticed a definite trend in recent years to setting stories in the 70s, in the 80s, in the 90s. And I think it's exactly for that reason, Steve. It's like, you know, I once asked Sandy Svoboda is a local journalist. She's married to a cop. And we were talking about this one day, and he said, you know, if you were to ask me what's the number one thing you can do to not get caught if you're planning a crime, it's like leave your phone at home. So because you know it's pinging off of all these towers.
Well, that's what the guy in Idaho, the Idaho guy, left his phone at home at the time of the murder, but for the previous month when he was scouting the place,
right.
he had his phone all the time.
Exactly.
So
but Nancy, how do you then post real-time selfies and video of the crime if you leave your phone at home? I mean, what decade are you in?
But I mean, I think Steve's got the right idea with his no smartphone idea that his pledge to always carry a dumb phone. He's got the right idea.
Again,
so that's the reason.
Wait a minute. You do not have a smartphone. What you have is an addictive device. Don't tell me it's a smartphone. My phone's a lot smarter than yours is, because it'll never incriminate me in anything, because there ain't no text messages, ain't no pictures of me with a sawed-off shotgun or 5 kilos of cocaine like some of the idiot guys I represent. Anyway, but don't tell me it's a smartphone, because there ain't nothing smart about it.
You're right.
Can I propose for the first annual the week that was pay-per-view event that we put your phone, Steve, and your phone, Nancy, in a cage and see which phone wins.
I have to say, you're absolutely right, Steve. You're absolutely right, and I've been noticing lately that I have really got to start like cutting back on this stuff, because it's just everything is addiction. You know, it's the social media is addictive. You know, I'm scrolling through, but at the same time, it's also very entertaining. I understand why kids get hooked on this stuff, but it's not a good idea. So, okay.
So I'd like to return back to SCOTUS, because the U.S. Supreme Court has also agreed to hear the case, which I think we were all expecting that it would take up on certiorari, of the Texas case regarding the abortion pill. And again, that looks like it's probably going to be one of the blockbuster cases for this term. Case was one that had some injunctions due to procedural matters, but it looks like it's full steam ahead. Does this look like it could very well be the end of the administration of an abortion pill?
It may be. You know, it'd be an awful decision, but the Dobbs decision was an awful decision. I don't know how you restrict it, quite frankly. I mean, this is going to be over state lines. I mean, it's just, I don't know if it's feasible, but this is a court that wants to turn back Griswold. This is a court that wants to turn back every civil rights case that has been ruled on before them. So they can do anything. Go ahead, Steve. I apologize. Go ahead.
Yeah, Steve.
I'm interested in what Ed will tell us about this. It seems to me that every time the Supreme Court, or let's say the court in Texas, those 9, I mean, you talk about 9 assholes. That's unbelievable what they did to that woman. But it seems to me it's the best thing that can happen for Democrats. I'm interested in what Ed sees in his polling, because every time they hope, they being the Republicans, man, we don't want to talk about that anymore. A new case comes up and something else is out there, and it gets everybody ticked off, which gets people to the polls and gets them to vote. So, Ed, do you see anything like that in the?
I would have to agree. As a matter of fact, that reignites the whole thing, because remember, they're going to tie it into the woman that had to leave the state because the baby was dying in her womb. Right. Well, the other discussion.
Not a baby.
Yeah.
Not a baby.
Yeah. Fetus.
Yeah. Cells.
Okay, whatever.
No, it is. It's more than whatever. That's the whole point. It's not a baby.
Yeah.
All right. It's not a
the other thing, just one quick question, Joel. What happens if they say they ban this drug, but that drug is used for other things other than the thing? Because when I worked as a nurse, we were using it for male PTSD. We're using for many other things. What do they do in a situation that it's used in other situations?
You know,
a lot of women develop ulcers. Because that's what it is, basically. It's
my guess is the Republicans going to try to criminalize any possible thing that they can. But I agree with you. If it has multi-purposes, how do you regulate it? That's, you know, how is it feasible if it's for more than one, than simply to abort a fetus? Forgive me. You know,
So that's an interesting argument, Joel. I mean, it's almost like speech cases where you have vagueness and being overbroad. The banning of a drug that has uses that are far beyond just this.
Yeah, I mean, I think the court would have to go through some more gymnastics to get there. Would it have to disregard other precedent to get there? I mean, but this court is more than capable of doing that because we've seen them do it.
Yeah.
So I would be surprised but not shocked, if that makes sense, because this court's capable of doing anything. Donald, you got Trump appointees who really don't seem to care much about women's rights.
No.
Well, they think that stare decisis is something you see in the night sky. So,
I remember reading something not too long ago about fentanyl, and I sit in a fire hose of information all day long, in part because of my addiction device. But it was something about there have been ways in the past for you to essentially order fentanyl from China. Okay, through mail order. You can get a pound, a kilo at a time, which is, as they're always telling us, enough to kill the population of, west of the Rockies. But anyway, and it was difficult to be controlled because every time there was a law passed against it, they could change a small chemicals formula in the drug itself, and suddenly it's considered an entirely different drug, even though it is indeed fentanyl. So my guess is that could possibly be what happens in this case. It's okay, mifepristone is banned, but this isn't mifepristone, even though it has the exact same effect. We tweaked one little molecule in the chemical formula, and that's what happened.
Or
so
you
that's
split it into two different drugs.
Or you split it into two different drugs, or you order through the mail from Canada or Mexico or some other less benighted country than this one.
But here we are, back to the back alleys.
Right. I mean,
because it's not going to stop a fucking thing.
Right.
No,
except the legality of it.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's just women, so nobody cares.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So Steve,
nine men on the Supreme Court in Texas. 9 men.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So
one of whom I believe was one of those Operation Rescue guys who, who got arrested like 29 times protesting in front of clinics.
Right.
So there.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, so this is the case where the Texas Supreme Court canceled the abortion exception, which was part of Texas law. Kate Cox was the lady that has been affected by this. Apparently so extreme that even Texas Senator Ted Cruz is not able to defend the Supreme Court's decision in Austin on this. Is this going to have a ripple effect? I mean, is this going to be seen? I mean, Barb and Nancy.
If there's any fucking justice in the world, yes, it will have a ripple effect. I certainly hope it has. I hope it has a tsunami effect, because these people are fucking freaks, and they need to be. I mean, I heard an interview with Kate Cox yesterday. I had not heard her voice, but the New York Times Daily podcast had a recorded interview with her. She's weeping throughout the entire interview. She desperately wanted this child. She has 2 kids already. She wants to have more. But this was just one of those, genetic hiccups that happen sometimes in a pregnancy. And if she continued to carry this child, she had been to the ER. She was like 20 some weeks or something. She'd been to the ER like 4 or 5 times because of various stuff that was going on with this pregnancy. She needs to get it out of her body. And this is not a baby this is not a baby. This is a fetus that has virtually no chance for life outside of the womb. And it just needs to end. And
it was never going to be a baby.
It was never going to be a baby. I presume by now her abortion has been carried out, and that she's either on her way back to that shithole that she lives in, or looking at real estate listings in Michigan. I hope. I don't know. But that was anybody who could listen to that interview and say, nope, you're not going to do that, slut, should just be fucking guillotined.
Well, the question's going to be when she goes back to Texas, will they charge her with a death?
Well, exactly. That's something that she has to consider.
She needs to come to the United States of America somehow, and let those fucking people secede or whatever. The other woman, and whose name I can't remember, and I'm so sorry, but she had a miscarriage and she is being tried for murder. And any woman who has ever been through that is like this right now, and that's how you get people. That's because everyone in their deepest, most visceral self, every woman is going, "Oh hell no."
Yeah, hell no, exactly. There was another case.
There's an Indian American woman in Indiana that I think was charged after she miscarried.
I do remember that. Yes, and she was. Yeah. She had a South Asian name. It's something. They mentioned in this interview also yesterday that there was another woman who had gone through fertility treatments. She so desperately wanted this child. She's carrying this pregnancy. She's at 18 weeks and her water breaks. And anybody who's been through a pregnancy knows when the water breaks at that stage, it's game over, because it can't be. You can't repair the membrane. It's a membrane. Once it's broken, it's like you just have to have a DNC and start over. But because the baby had a heartbeat, they couldn't do anything. Her doctors couldn't do anything because they were afraid of being sued or charged or something worse. And so they ended up just waiting until the heartbeat of that baby had finally stopped. And by that time, she was septic. And now she has so much scar tissue down in her fallopian tubes and uterus that she will never carry a baby.
Never.
And that is, and those are the cases. I hope there's an ad team that is working on this stuff and, is preparing some really hard hitting ads for next fall, because this is something that will get women to the polls.
Yep. And also in Texas, if she's lucky, she live in a county that if you go across the border, that you're going to do something, that you get a charge from that county.
Right.
So I saw a commercial this morning, and again, yesterday was the anniversary of Sandy Hook. We can't forget that. Those were actual babies, by the way. Those weren't babies. Those were live children, and they were slaughtered. And there's a commercial, and it's a little girl in this beautiful backyard, and she falls into a swimming pool.
That. Yeah.
And she's at the bottom of the pool, and her mother comes out and she's screaming for help, and there is no one to help her. And then they say that the number one cause of death among children in the United States of America in this year of our Lord, 2023, is gun violence.
Right. No, everybody who was there was going, "Hey, thoughts and prayers. Thoughts and prayers." As a lifeguard, though, I was screaming at that lady, "Go in and get the kid out!"
but the point is that they don't care. They don't give a single solitary ice cold fuck about children.
No, they don't.
None. No. Zero. Don't care about children. They can make it as cute and fuzzy as you can, and you can call it a baby and baby killers and all those other things. But the real baby killers are out walking around.
Right.
And they're killing actual children. So,
So who I know you're one of our viewers. That's 9. I know you're also counting as well. But just to make sure about that. Yes, I think you need to update that, Mr. Eno Leggett.
And I built up to it as much as I could too. I tried to give it everything I had.
All right. Okay, Alan. Why don't we go to a commercial? And actually, on the way out. Speaking of people who are looking to commercialize themselves, I think you have a video clip.
I'm sorry, which one
I think we're talking about Brother George.
Do we not play that? Okay.
Look, it's funny. The idea came from a former Kevin McCarthy staffer. He reached out and says, "George, you have such a large personality. The people love you. You should just open a Cameo." I'm like, "What's a Cameo?" So I looked into it. I'm like, "Oh, that's what that's called. The videos where people send you birthday wishes."
There's no way that guy didn't know what Cameo was before that.
What a
I would
charmer.
believe that from Steve Fishman, but I would not believe it from George Santos. I'm sorry.
Honestly, Alan, I don't think the word Riz could be used for him. But I also so hate the fact that he's now switched to black turtlenecks and blazers.
Because that's your look.
Yeah.
You should have trademarked that,
yes.
Saeed.
He bought on somebody else's credit.
Well, given the fact that he has lied and he has tried to impersonate so many other people, the fact that it's finally come to me. Oi, okay. Now.
All right.
It's your time.
Commercial time.
Thanks, Charles, for letting me use your gardening supplies. I'll make sure I put it back in the garage. Man, tending to that lawn is a lot of work.
Tell you the truth, Jim, I'm more concerned about keeping this house.
What's going on?
Well, you know, Sarah lost her job 2 months ago, right?
Yeah.
Since we lost that income, the bills have been piling up, and we're so far behind. I don't want to lose the house because of back taxes. I don't know what to do.
I understand. The same thing happened to my sister and her husband when he lost his job. Do you know that the Wayne County Treasurer has plans and programs to help people stay in their homes?
No, I didn't. Tell me about it.
Yeah, go to www.treasurer.waynecounty.com to see if you qualify.
What's that site again?
www.treasurer.waynecounty.com.
Got it.
All right, and now
downtown Detroit, Robert Wells, Schmuck of the Week.
Okay, I have received a request, and I shall honor it. Nancy, who's your Schmuck of the Week?
Well, I only wanted to go first because I have a feeling that a lot of other people have this person on their list this week, and I wanted to, as a female, as a woman, be the first person to name Ken Paxton Schmuck of the Week. Ken Paxton is, of course, the Attorney General of the terrible state of Texas, and he is the one who refused to let Kate Cox have her abortion in the state that she lives in and forced her to leave. And he is a Trumper and a real piece of shit. And I think he could qualify as Schmuck of the Year based on his actions so far. But in Paxton, you. So
and apparently he's under his own criminal charges right now.
For 3 years.
Yes, for quite some time, and he was impeached and then acquitted in the trial, and however they do it in Texas. But he's corrupt, and he's also the guy who came up with the last ditch petition after the 2020 election to try to essentially, have a do-over. And he was the one who got like every other pussy AG in the country to sign on to it, including Todd Rokita in Indiana and David Yost in Ohio. And he's awful. So.
And he also announced this week that the judges who are not following his track, he will definitely unseat them when they're up for re-election next year.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes.
Well, good for you.
Justice system.
Yeah,
All right.
so there you go. I bet he's one of those guys who wears like snakeskin cowboy boots because he's such a he thinks
With
he's
heels.
with heels.
There's two words that provide at least a little bit of redemption for Texas. Torchy's Tacos. But
okay.
That's about it. Ed, who's your Schmuck?
Going along the same line as Nancy, I think another assault on women is Rudy Giuliani.
Oh, God.
I mean, what he did this week, after admitting he did something wrong, now because he doesn't have anybody's back to say everything I said was true, and no, you may not like it, but it is true.
That's the best.
He knows if he digs hard enough, he'll find that thing in there somewhere.
Ed, you should know by now that you mentioned Rudy's name, and it's like a drinking game. Allan will
right?
that.
Yes.
But I'm glad you did mention it because it's
that was great.
Oh my goodness, Steve.
Oh, go ahead.
Mine is the Colorado Congressman Ken Buck, who is an otherwise unknown kind of a guy to the right of everybody. But he claimed over and over again that he was never going to vote for this impeachment inquiry because it's horseshit and there isn't anything there. We've already looked, blah, 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 blah. But what does he do when the vote comes up? He makes this distinction. You see, well, I'm not really voting for impeachment. It's just going to give us the opportunity to do more things and blah, 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 ignoring the things he'd been saying for the last however many months about how the more things that they're going to do aren't going to produce anything more than what's already been produced. So the hypocrisy of all of them is one thing. But for this guy to have gone public constantly saying he's not supporting it, he's not going to vote, he's my schmuck of the week. And Paxton, you can't beat Paxton. So, but he's second to Paxton.
Yeah.
Runner up schmuck. Okay, Barb.
My schmuck of the week is the Michigan Republican Party. I know you're all surprised to hear me say that. What they're doing is, it seems like they've got enough votes. My personal spirit animal, Christina, what's her name? What the hell is her name? Christina Cramo. Don't do it. Don't do it. Just be inept and stupid with her. It's not going to make any difference, and it will take most of the joy out of my life. So just as a personal plea, leave her alone. Leave her there. Schmucks of the week. Why do it?
I read that.
Oh, and by the way,
I was just going to say, I read that report about her. And I was struck by her fundraising strategy, which sounded like one of those flow charts where it's like, and then a miracle happens and the money pours in. So there, but
we dispel the demons.
Yeah.
Brittany Watts is the name of the woman who's being prosecuted for her miscarriage.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay. I just wanted to say that. Say her name because she doesn't get the and it's all awful. Anyway, that's it.
Okay.
All right. Joel.
Okay, here's why it's a non-political stuff, but it has a connection to Dumars. The Pistons were once a great franchise. They won championships. The last one they won, I think, was in 2004. I remember being like 29 and watching them, going to every single game. They haven't won, I think, in 2 months. I think they're 0 for November and 0 for
They're 2-22 or something like that. They won 2 games all season.
So incompetent, inept that there's the biggest schmuck is ownership. They don't know what, even though they know what they're doing, or they have talent that because they seem to have some talent, but they can't seem to win. They can't do anything. And they paid Monty Williams, I think, $10 million a year to coach them, to get them, and they're god awful. So my schmuck of the week is the ownership of the Detroit Pistons.
A very poorly managed team.
I am so disappointed. I was really hoping that, hey, they're going to show some progress. I loved watching them play, and it's unwatchable, man. It's just awful.
One of the guys from one of the young reporters at Axios went to a game recently and had a picture from the top of the stands. It's like practically empty, The Little Caesars. It's just it's like a high school game,
Maybe the taxpayers need to build them a new stadium. That's what we tend to do.
Yeah.
Take it out of the school fund.
Yeah.
And when Al Gore or Tom Gore's moved down to Detroit, I think it was going to cost $30 million extra, and he asked for the money. These guys are billionaires. He wanted the $30 million, from taxpayers. And
how do you get to be a billionaire?
Yeah, and it's outrageous. I mean, if you look at really their administration there, they've just got bad management up and down, and it's just,
they don't care.
It's a shanda.
It is.
It's not
the shanda of the week.
You know what else is a shanda, Alan? Apparently, Curb Your Enthusiasm is coming to an end after 24 seasons.
February 4th is the last season starts.
All right. And Barb, by the way, I mean, look, there is the Red Wings there, and apparently there was a Travis Scott concert earlier this week. So there's other things for that building. Just saying, Alan.
Speaking of sports and sports owners, I'm here in D.C. Ted Leonsis came from AOL, owns both teams, the Wizards and the Capitals, and he's announced that he wants to go to Virginia. And, Governor Youngkin is looking at it as a great coup that he's taking, which is a big blow to the city. It has to be approved by the state legislature. in Virginia before it happens. And there's some local opposition in areas like, and it's going to screw up traffic around the airport and stuff like that. And it's such a blow to the city here, which is having a lot of problems. Their carjackings are out of control here in the city. And it's just another blow to the city, and the city's going to try to fight it to try to keep him here. But I think, and he's talked about how he loved the city when he came, and he, just all this bullshit, and now he's, taking two teams. Losing two teams is a big deal. They both played out in the burbs, and they finally, Abe Powell and the owner brought them down into the city. So he's the schmuck of the week.
Good one.
All right. Well, my schmucks of the week are Christian and Bridget Ziegler of Florida. Christian is the Florida GOP chair accused of rape, who has demanded a $2 million payout before he steps down as his role of the chair of the Florida GOP. He has admitted to police already that he and his wife, Bridget, had been in a menage a trois. That's menage a trois, not a menage a troika.
Thruple, we call them.
with the accuser. And by the way, also Bridget is on the Sarasota County School Board, and she refuses to resign from the board, despite the fact that the board, unanimously, except for her vote, voted to have her removed. I think it's non-binding. She also happens to be the co-founder of Moms for Liberty and was instrumental in helping Governor DeSantis pass the Don't Say Gay legislation. So for that alone, actually for all of that, Christian and Bridget Ziegler.
She's a freak, she's a freak in the sheets, and
no, she's a super freak.
I mean, what man is into that? That's she really is. She's one of those girls. Yeah.
Nancy, get your Rick James right.
Yeah.
She's a super freak.
She's a super freak, right?
Temptation sing.
When I got incense, wine, and candles.
Oh, wow.
It's a very freaky scene. See, we know these things.
Well, my other schmuck was Bobby Storm, 36-year-old Detroit gospel singer, twice nominated for the Grammys, who almost got kicked off a flight because she wouldn't stop singing while the flight attendant was trying to get her attention and saying, look, you're too loud. We have announcements to go ahead and make. She was trying to go ahead and sing the song, something, We Can't Forget Him. I remember the good old days when the only thing that you had to say to get kicked off a flight was Allahu Akbar, but now it's anybody can get kicked off. Anybody.
What's the world coming to?
What's the world coming to? Well, listen, thank you for a great show. And by the way, next week we are going to be broadcasting live on Festivus Eve. So all of you, bring your aluminum pole, no tinsel, and we will have an airing of grievances.
Yes.
You have to bring one of those. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Joel Sklar. Thank you, Steve Fishman. Thank you, Ed Sarpolus. Thank you, Barb Ingalls. Thank you, Nancy Derringer. And thank you, and with the last word always, Allan.
Drive home safely.
Take care.